Hello. This is
Love and Rockets and Olive.
And you're watching MTV.
No, Week in Rock.
I'm sorry, no, you're not. The Week in Rock. You're watching the Week in Rock.
This week, we've got Paul McCartney back on stage in the States for the first time in more than a decade. Tom Petty charting on his own, but back on tour with the Heartbreakers, and spreading a little sunshine from coast to coast, The Cure. I'm Kurt Loder. Welcome to the Week in Rock. The Rolling Stones will launch their first U.S. tour in 8 years on Thursday at Philadelphia's Veterans Coliseum. They'll be bringing along a truly astonishing ultra-tech stage set and a wide-ranging 2-hour show filled with classic hits, vintage nuggets like Ruby Tuesday, and a number of songs the Stones have never performed live before, including 2,000 Light Years from Home off their 1967 Satanic Majesty's Request album. And of course, they'll also be unveiling new tunes from their new LP, Steel Wheels, which Rolling Stone magazine has already called their best in a decade. So the Stones are back in a really big way, and last Tuesday we drove out to Garden City, New York, where the group was rehearsing, to talk to the boys about their set, their stage, and to put together this report on what's frequently been called, and may well prove still to be, the world's greatest rock and roll band.
It's a really fun stage. It's different from the 81 tour insofar that it's much darker in mood. There's no cherry picker, but there's not a tremendous... Well, I'm not saying there's no gimmicks. I mean, it's a very large stage. I mean, I think you've got to give a big stage in a large stadium. I don't think you want to play, on a postage stamp.
The Stones themselves may seem about postage stamp size from a lot of the seats in the huge venues they're playing this time out. It's the old rock and roll toss-up between intimacy and access.
The smaller the joint, the better rock and roll sounds. But I mean, at the same time, if there's that many people want to see you, what are you going to do? Live in a town for a year and play a garage?
The Stones have already played one garage-sized gig, a warm-up show at a small Connecticut club called Toad's Place. How was it?
I felt like I was a cat enclosed in a cage. I was trying all these moves, to run out of stage like that much. I mean, it was a pretty good-sized stage for a club, actually. I mean, it was. But I had a good time, and you get all excited, and I start messed up some of the arrangements.
And arrangements are a key factor in the Stones' new show. Instead of just firing up their hits for maximum on-stage impact, they've actually gone back to the original records this time and tried to recapture some of their vintage feel.
On stage, things tend to get faster and faster and faster. If you play them year in, year out, it's just one of those things that happen. Well, what will be after when we made that record? Let's see if we can just get back into that head for a minute, which is a pretty weird head. And then, geez, I had to look in and I said, no way.
Peering into the past does have its rewards, though. It's persuaded the Stones to pull out songs like She's a Rainbow and 2,000 Light Years from Home off the once-reviled psychedelic album, their Satanic Majesty's Request.
We do a blinding version of 2,000 Light Years.
Really?
Which none of us can explain.
Where did that come from? What a good idea.
We decided to have a go at it. We thought, oh, we'll never do it.
We've never done it before.
Immediately we tried it. With a couple of little guiders from Bill.
Are you renting a Mellotron for this, or I guess you can just do it?
A couple of guiders from me, like how the chord structure goes. And what people play.
It's a dead giveaway, folks.
And how the intro works.
It's a dead giveaway.
Showing you how to play the intro on my bass.
I know, it shows you. I'm still working.
Rolling Stones back at last. Those clip snippets you saw there are from the video for the Stones' new single, Mixed Emotions, which is having its world premiere here on MTV this weekend, Sunday to be exact, at 3, 5, 7, and 11 p.m. Speaking of long-running 60s rock luminaries, Paul McCartney was in New York this week, vacationing on Long Island with the wife and kids, and on Thursday, zipping into Manhattan to take over Broadway's Lyceum Theater for a press conference to announce his first U.S. tour in more than 13 years. Not a wildly exciting concept, except for one thing. McCartney also brought along his new band, which features wife Linda on keyboards and ex-Pretender Robbie McIntosh and Average White Band alumnus Hamish Stewart on guitars, and they all got up on stage and played, like this. McCartney, of course, had his pick of the many hits he's had a hand in writing, a string of classics that reaches back to his Beatles days.
I wrote a list of about 35 songs that were what I consider to be some of my best songs, and we just chose from that. So basically we've chosen from like a rock and roll period, pre-Beatles, then Beatles period, Wings period, and then the new album.
In keeping with the retrospective nature of his show, he plans to give away free 100-page concert brochures to fans at every stop and to bring along members of the environmental group Friends of the Earth to spread the word about saving the planet.
The reason for the Friends of the Earth thing is actually that we figured that after we've been out on the road for like a year chatting to people and stuff, it would be great if when we get back at the end of it all, we think, well, we said something that meant something.
McCartney had considered using local bands as opening acts for each stop on the tour, but then he had a better idea.
I think what we're going to do is show a movie in front, which is being worked on at the moment by Richard Lester, the guy who directed Hard Day's Night and Hell. So he's making a kind of movie that shows like historical perspective, and then we come on after that. The movie turns into us.
McCartney's tour is, of course, in support of his latest album, Flowers in the Dirt, a record that's done well abroad, but only went gold in this country and is now dropping down the charts. He's not discouraged, though.
I don't think this album's dead. I just don't think it's been put around as much as some stuff. It's certainly not been hyped much. So I got a feeling it's a bit of a grower.
That could be. There are a lot of people out there who've loved Paul McCartney for more than a quarter of a century. And there's a new generation that knows him only by legend. McCartney hopes to reach both these crowds on his upcoming tour.
And I love the fact that people haven't seen us before. I mean, I think that's great, because I've got a lot of kind of young nephews or nieces who kind of say, you know, please play, because we weren't there the first time around. And I really like that idea.
McCartney will kick off his U.S. tour on November 27th, opening a 3-night stand at the Los Angeles Forum. He'll hit Chicago and New York City in December and then return for more dates around the country, including stops in Dallas, Detroit, Seattle, and San Francisco in the new year. We'll be back in a moment with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, The Cure, and The. Don't go away.
Watch this. The burp champion of the world.
Burp? I mean, Bart, are you burping again?
Maybe.
What is it with this burping? Why? What's the thrill?
It's fun.
It's crude. It's vulgar. It's impolite. And it's nauseating.
That's what I said. It's fun.
Welcome back to the Week in Rock. The Cure, holding steady at number 27 on the Billboard chart this week with their Disintegration LP, pulled into New York City Harbor aboard the QE2 on Sunday to launch a U.S. tour that may or may not be their last, depending on how seriously you take such pronouncements. In any event, our man John Norris was waiting dockside when they arrived, and he tagged along to the opening show that night at New Jersey's Giants Stadium. Here's his report.
Hi, I'm John Norris at Pier 90 in New York on a Sunday morning. Well, I guess if you're going to take a boat, you take a boat. And that behind me is a real boat, the Queen Elizabeth II, which just pulled into port. On board it, The Cure. You know, The Cure are not big fans of flying, not big fans of touring either. So to embark on what they say is going to be their last U.S. tour ever, they went on a 5-day transatlantic crossing on the world's most famous luxury liner. The Cure have toured the States before, but never with this big a splash. Coming off their biggest European tour ever, they've now got some 25 North American cities ahead of them, including for the first time 4 outdoor stadium shows. Big blowouts where they share the bill with kindred modern rockers, Lovin' Rockets, and the Pixies.
They didn't have that much faith in us playing the stadium, so they decided to get another act on the bill. But we had sort of veto over who it was. So there were some pretty dreadful names suggested at first, but Lovin' Rockets should be all right.
As he disembarked from the QE2 with his wife Mary, there was a lot on Robert Smith's always complex mind, such as his latest single, Love Song, which he wrote as a wedding present for Mary.
Whenever I'm alone with you, you make me feel like I am home again.
It's probably the most difficult song that I've had to sing, because it doesn't have any kind of twist to it. It's very straightforward, very honest. I think I find it very difficult to sing, honestly, a lot of the time.
Also, the prospect of playing huge stadiums, something that still surprises The Cure, and about which Smith has decidedly mixed feelings.
I think it's just taken it to such an absurd degree that it becomes funny, really. So. I really don't know what it will be like tonight.
All right, well, it is now 12 hours later, and what Robert Smith thought was going to be absurd, here's how absurd it is. Almost 50,000 people packing in New Jersey's Giant Stadium to see The Cure.
Show me how you do it. I promise you, I promise I'll run away with you.
Awesome. Awesome enough, in fact, that Cure fans should get their tickets while they can. Because even though Robert Smith says there probably will be another Cure album, if you want to see one of the most original bands of the 80s live, this is most likely your last chance.
Well, maybe. The Cure will be playing another triple header with the Pixies and Love and Rockets at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles on September 8th. Already tearing things up out on the concert trail is America's own Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Petty may have scored a top 5 hit with his first solo album, Full Moon Fever, but when it came time to hit the road, he summoned his favorite band to back him up. Here's why.
This is one of the new ones here.
I just wanted to get away from the routine of being with the same people for 12 years and more, some of them, you know. So it was good for me to meet some new people and go out on my own and just do something, you know. But I never had any intention of quitting. I'm glad that I'm back, you know, in the band and doing this. I would never want to go on the road with another band or something. I wouldn't see the point in it. This band's a very powerful thing.
This blonde guy I've known for half of my life. What is there to say? I'd rather play with him than anybody else I know. I like his songs. I love the way he writes. And I'm not sure about the way he dresses, but, you know, we all have our little quirks.
I just wanted to let you know that in a fit of responsibility, the band and myself have invited the Greenpeace organization along on the tour.
Leave it to Petty to bring Greenpeace and the Heartbreakers together with his opening act, The Replacements. So now that he's taken both the relevant and the irreverent on the road, we're wondering, what about Petty's other band, the Traveling Wilburys?
Well, the Wilburys tour? Very unlikely. I don't think they should tour. I mean, if you're asking just me, I hope we don't. If they all say, we're going to tour, I'll go. But my vote would be no. I'm just a bit concerned that in the end of the 70s, you know, between disco and drugs, music got really lousy, you know, still pretty lousy. You know, and if you don't believe me, just watch 30 minutes after I keep talking, you know? It's not about getting the clothes and getting in them and playing as fast as you possibly can. It's really not about that, you know? It's about songs and getting them over.
Also touching down in the States recently was a tour by the strangely named English act, The. For the last 6 years, this group has consisted mainly of a multi-talented studio whiz named Matt Johnson. But now Johnson has turned The into an actual band. And since it includes the celebrated ex-Smiths guitarist Johnny Marr in its lineup, it's a band worth catching. We did recently, and here's what we found.
Infect me with your love.
A thinking man's band, if ever there was one. Britain's The has, for most of its 10 years, been one thinking man. Singer, songwriter, poet, and all-around interesting guy, Matt Johnson. America first discovered The in 1983, and the single This Is the Day from Johnson's U.S. debut album Soul Mining became a staple on college radio.
This is the day your life will surely change. This is the day when things fall into place.
This week week in New York, Matt Johnson was singing This Is the Day live in a warm-up date for the The's first ever tour. And now that Johnson's recruited 3 top-flight musicians to back him up, The is no longer merely a one-man band.
Being a solo artist for a long period of time, it gets kind of lonely in a way. I mean, it does. You're travelling around the world on your own and not having that direct feedback. It's one thing having your family, your friends giving you that feedback. But there's nothing that can beat that actually sharing and working directly with other musicians.
The's traditional low profile has been compromised a bit because one of the new band members is a star in his own right. Guitar hero Johnny Marr, formerly of the Smiths and an old chum of Matt Johnson's.
The reason I got him in was he's the best guitarist in the world, in my opinion. I mean, we worked brilliantly together. He wanted to join the group. And it gives us a two-pronged attack. I mean, he's got a massive following around the world.
Inspired by current events and books on philosophy, Johnson's songs are anything but typical. One track on The's latest album, Mind Bomb, tackles a subject that especially intrigues Johnson: the religious and political clash between the Islamic East and the Christian West.
I think the West should just pull out and just keep its mind on its own business. If it didn't antagonise, then there wouldn't be a problem, but they don't think like that. They continually antagonise and try to manipulate. And I don't blame the Iranians, frankly. You know, I disagree with the use of violence wherever it is, you know, and taking hostages. I'm completely opposed to that.
If you think that Jesus Christ is coming, honey, you got another thing coming.
Still, Johnson says he's optimistic that a global religion will one day surface to replace conventional ones. He's equally optimistic about the future of his hot new band. He's entrusted his 10-year-old child, The in their hands, and he hopes the group will stick together long past their first world tour.
I form a permanent group, one which I want to keep together to the end of the century. Sounds a long way away. It's not really that far away, is it?
The is in Europe right now, but the group will be back to play more dates in this country in October. One man who won't be playing any more dates, at least not on his current tour, is Lou Reed. Lou broke his right ankle last weekend while walking down some metal steps leading off stage at a theater in Cleveland. He's had to cancel the last 2 weeks of his U.S. tour, but he will be back in 3 months with his old Velvet Underground partner John Cale to unveil the complete Songs for Drella, their musical tribute to Andy Warhol, at New York's Brooklyn Academy of Music. That 4-night stand kicks off on November 30th, and in the meantime, we wish our pal Lou a speedy recovery. We'll be back with a look at fanzines and Madonna's favorite photographer, but first we'd like to note that this is the 100th edition of the Week in Rock, that it takes a lot of people to put this show together each week, and that these are them.
Impressive British variety.
Welcome back to the Week in Rock. Some of the liveliest writing about rock music and the people who make it is published in fanzines, those impassioned and obsessively detailed periodicals that chronicle rock's foremost stars and its fascinating fringes, too. There are thousands of fanzines out there. Here's a look at just a few of them.
Say you want to read about a band who are on a very small independent label, or you want to find out about new stuff that you don't think you'll find out about in, say, Rolling Stone or Spin or anything like that. This is where you got to look.
Previous issues have included features on people like the Frogs, who are a gay supremacist folk duo in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Black Snakes.
We'll have interviews with Naked Raygun, My Bloody Valentine, and the Mekons in it, among others.
There's no telling exactly how many fanzines there are. This store carries thousands with over 300 about music.
But, I mean, you also find fanzines about other subjects. My favorite is Murder Can Be Fun, which is a fanzine out of San Francisco, which focuses primarily on true crime and terrible disasters and things like that. But that's a personal interest.
Fanzines could be anything from hand-stapled photocopies to professional colored glossy spreads, depending on how deep the publisher's pockets are. But are the fanzines any good? Aren't the writers just fans?
They know what they're talking about, for one. They're people who spend a lot of time listening to the music that they talk about. and they do a good job with very little money.
The first issue that I put out cost $500, and this last issue that I put out cost $2,000 to put out.
Profit is not the idea behind most fanzines. Publishers say if they make back their cost, that's a success.
It takes a long time to get the money back, and by the time you have gotten the money back, it's really debatable whether or not you've really made anything from it when you figure out all the time you've put in. But I mean, I'm not really doing. I don't make a living from doing it. That's not the point.
Some fanzines focus on a single band, more like a fan club newsletter. There are over 40 fanzines for KISS alone.
A lot of the stories that we would like to read weren't being covered, and we like to read about things that only a KISS fan could appreciate.
You know, the press always covers the Stones and makes things so sensational, and what I do with Beggar's Banquet is I show how human they are.
But are the bands even aware of these magazines?
Bill German, yeah.
Bill, yeah.
Bill German, Bill what?
You know them?
Of course. Really? I mean, how do you think he gets his information?
Support your local fanzine. LA-based Herb Ritz was already a star photographer before he started shooting album covers and fashion spreads for Madonna a few years back. But now she's put Ritz behind a new kind of camera, directing the video for her latest single, Cherish. It's a clever and, as usual with Madonna, a very wet video. And right now, let's see if we can get Ritz himself to tell us more about it.
I think you might enjoy hearing a little bit about this first effort that I worked on with Madonna. And luckily that swimming pool was very dirty, so it looked like the ocean. So that's sort of how it came about. It was sort of her pushing me and me sort of finally saying, okay, let me give this thing a try. And I actually got hooked, so it was great.
Madonna's Cherish video will have its world premiere Monday night on Now Hear This. That's about it. We'll be back next week with lots more Rolling Stones, and we'll be back on Monday night with a new show, MTV's News at Night, which will be clamoring for your attention at 8:30 every night, Monday through Thursday, so consider yourself warned. We'll see you then.